I noticed something very interesting last month while reviewing retirement portfolios for my high net worth clients. I realized that almost every American was following the same retirement strategy, and it was clearly doomed to fail. In my 25 years on Wall Street, I've witnessed many retirement crises, but what we're facing now is a little different. This time, it's not just individual investors collapsing, it's the entire system. Let me tell you a story because it explains everything. 3 weeks ago, a 62-year-old engineer came into my office. He'd worked at Boeing for 35 years and followed every rule. He'd maximized his 401k contributions, fully utilized company matching, and ensured proper diversification. He'd accumulated $1.2 million in his retirement accounts. Tom, he said, is that enough? When I heard that question, I immediately did the math in my head. Under the 4% withdrawal rule, he could withdraw $48,000 a year. That's $4,000 a month. After taxes, he'll be left with about $3,200. This man was a Boeing engineer. He earned $12,000 a month while working. Now he has to live on $3,200. This isn't just math, it's a tragedy. But what's truly shocking is this man is considered successful. Most Americans have around $65,000 in retirement savings, but this engineer had an income 18 times that average. And it's still not enough. If you carefully examine all the retirement advice you've received over the last decade, you'll realize they all rest on the same basic assumption: the system will protect you. This assumption is not only wrong, but dangerously misleading. Last week I spoke with another client, a 68-year-old retired teacher. He taught in California for 30 years. He had a pension, Social Security, and a 403b account. On paper, he was secure. Tom, I can pay less and less each month, he told me. Prices are constantly rising, but my income remains the same. This woman was being crushed by inflation. Her pension theoretically included inflation adjustments, but the increases were far below actual inflation. In 2020, she spent $3,500 monthly. By 2024, she needed $4,600 to buy the same things. But her income had only increased to $3,800. She was falling behind by $800 every month. Millions of retirees are in this situation, and none of them were prepared because nobody told them the truth. During my time at Fundstrat, we analyzed institutional pension funds. In 2019, I attended a CalPERS board meeting, California's largest pension fund, managing $450 billion. The numbers discussed at that meeting were terrifying. Oh! The fund had a 68% funded ratio. This meant they could only cover 68% of their future obligations. And this was based on an assumption of 7% annual return. What happens if we don't achieve 7% returns? I asked. Silence. Because everyone knew. Then the system collapses. After that meeting, I realized something crucial. The retirement crisis isn't just an individual problem. It's a systemic problem. And systemic problems require solutions outside the system. The most important lesson I learned on Wall Street was this: when everyone is running in the same direction, smart people look the other way. The same principle applies to retirement planning. Working with institutional clients taught me that the gap between public promises and mathematical reality is enormous. Pension funds promise 7 to 8% returns in an environment where achieving 4 to 5% is challenging. Social Security promises benefits that demographics make impossible to sustain. 401k plans promise retirement security with contribution limits that make security impossible. Here's what nobody tells you. The retirement system was designed when life expectancy was lower, birth rates were higher, and economic growth was more predictable. Those conditions no longer exist, but the system pretends they do. I've watched this disconnect grow wider every year. Client after client comes to me with the same confusion. I did everything right. Why isn't it working? The answer is simple. They followed rules designed for a world that no longer exists. The retirement industry has a vested interest in maintaining these illusions. Financial advisors earn fees from 401k management. Insurance companies profit from annuity sales. Government benefits from payroll tax collection. Nobody wants to admit the fundamental mathematics don't work. But mathematical reality doesn't care about vested interests. And that reality is about to collide with millions of American retirements. The risk is clear. Blind faith in this retirement lie could cost you your complete financial security by the 2030s. Right now, 78 million baby boomers are retiring in America. This demographic tsunami is making the retirement system mathematically unsustainable. But you're not being told this truth. Instead, you hear comforting phrases like market volatility is temporary and everything works out long term. Let me show you the real numbers because reality will shock you. According to the 2023 Social Security Trustee Report, the trust fund will be exhausted by 2034. After that date, incoming payroll taxes will only cover 77% of scheduled payments. This means every $1,000 Social Security payment drops to $770. But that's the optimistic scenario. If we hit a recession and unemployment rises, this date moves up to 2031. That's 7 years from now when millions of Americans will see their basic income source cut by 23%. The 401k situation is even more catastrophic. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances, median 401k balance for families aged 55-64. $65,000 annual income with 4% withdrawal rule, $2,600. Monthly income $217. You can't even pay rent with this money. Pension funds are in complete disaster mode. According to Wilshire Associates' latest report, total unfunded liability for state and local pension funds, $1.3 trillion. Average funded ratio 72% Illinois Pension Fund, 40% funded New Jersey Pension Fund, 58% funded Connecticut Pension Fund, 52% funded. What do these numbers mean? Millions of government workers in these states will receive only a fraction of their promised pensions. But the real problem lies in the assumptions behind these numbers. All calculations assume pension funds will achieve 7 to 8% annual returns. This assumption is based on the 1980 to 2020 average performance. What did we have during that period? A 40-year bull market, declining interest rates, rising productivity, and demographic dividend. None of these conditions will repeat over the next 20 years. Instead, we face high valuations, higher interest rates, demographic headwinds, and geopolitical instability. Achieving 7 to 8% returns under these conditions would require a miracle. CalSTAR's pension fund's chief investment officer stated openly in 2023, a 7% return expectation is no longer realistic. 5 to 6% is more realistic. This 2% difference translates to trillions in funding gaps. The most frightening part, this is just the beginning. The demographic tsunami is just starting. Through the 2030s, 10,000 baby boomers will retire every day. These people will withdraw from their 401ks, drain pension funds, and burden Social Security. Mathematical certainty. The system is collapsing. This collapse won't be gradual. It will be sudden and dramatic, like 2008, but worse. Because in 2008, the government provided bailouts. This time, the government itself is the problem. The Congressional Budget Office projects that by 2033, interest payments on national debt will exceed defense spending. By 2040, they'll exceed Social Security payments. When the government can barely pay interest on its debt, how will it bail out failing retirement systems? This is why following traditional retirement advice equals financial suicide. You're being told to trust a system that's mathematically doomed. Here's the scariest statistic. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the median retirement account balance for Americans approaching retirement is zero. Yes, zero. Over half of Americans have no retirement savings beyond Social Security. Even those who have been responsible savers face devastating shortfalls. The median 401k balance of $65,000 provides poverty-level income. The median home equity of $180,000, if converted to income, provides another $7,200 annually. Combined, this is $9,800 per year. The federal poverty line for a single person in 2024 is $15,060. Most successful American savers will retire below the poverty line. This isn't a distant problem. This is happening now. Every day, 10,000 Americans turn 65. Most of them discover their retirement savings are inadequate. Most of them become dependent on family or government assistance. The system isn't just failing, it's creating a generation of elderly poor. And if you're following traditional retirement advice, you're walking straight into this trap. Understanding the retirement crisis of the 1970s shows you exactly how to escape your current situation. During that period, we experienced similar demographic shifts. The Social Security system, established in 1935, was designed for those demographics. In 1940, there were 159 workers for every retiree. By 1950, 16 workers per retiree. By 1970, 3.7 workers per retiree. The system was mathematically collapsing. Congress had to face this reality in 1977. What did they do? Massive tax increases. They doubled the Social Security tax rate. They tripled the maximum taxable wage. This fix sustained the system for another 40 years. Now that fix is exhausted too. Today, the worker-to-beneficiary ratio is 2.8, and this ratio keeps declining every year. But here's the empowering truth. In the 1970s, people who anticipated this crisis and prepared accordingly protected their wealth. In fact, they created enormous fortunes. Let me tell you about one of my clients. In 1975, there was a man named Charlie. He was a production manager at General Motors. He was 45 years old with 10 years until his pension eligibility, but he saw the fights between the union and company. He realized the pension fund would face problems. What did he do? In 1976, he bought a small duplex in Detroit. He rented it out. The rental income paid the mortgage. In 1979, he bought a second duplex. In 1982, a third. People called him risky. They said, "You have a pension, why take risks?" When he retired in 1995, he owned 12 rental units. His monthly rental income was $8,400. His pension was $2,200. Total monthly income, $10,600. During the 2008 crisis, GM went bankrupt. Pension benefits were cut. Charlie's pension dropped to $1,100 per month, but his rental income continued. In fact, it increased because the foreclosure crisis boosted rental demand. Charlie is 94 years old today. His monthly income is $15,000 because real estate appreciation increased his rents along with inflation, while fixed pension retirees fell behind. This story illustrates a principle. System-dependent strategies are risky. System-independent strategies are safe. Here's another example. When the IRA system began in the 1980s, most people thought their 401ks were sufficient, but smart people opened additional IRA accounts. One of my clients opened an IRA in 1985 when he was 25 years old. He made maximum contributions every year. Back then, the limit was $2,000. People said, "What difference does an extra $2,000 make?" 39 years later, that IRA is worth $850,000 thanks to compound interest and tax deferral. This money became the foundation of his retirement security. The most important lesson: early action produces exponential results. Charlie, who bought the duplex in 1976 and my client who opened the IRA in 1985 both took early action, and this early action protected them from crises. A similar opportunity exists now. Most people are following traditional advice. If you develop system-independent strategies, you gain a competitive advantage. But timing is critical. Early actors in the 1970s won. Latecomers suffered losses during the crisis. The same window of opportunity exists now. Let me share another powerful example. In the early 1980s, a school teacher named Susan saw that her state pension system was underfunded. Instead of hoping for the best, she started a side business, tutoring and test preparation. By 1990, her tutoring business was generating $30,000 annually in additional income. She used this money to buy dividend-paying stocks and real estate investment trusts. People thought she was working too hard and should just rely on her pension. When she retired in 2010, her state pension had been cut by 30% due to budget crises. But her investment income from 25 years of reinvesting tutoring profits was generating $4,500 monthly. Combined with her reduced pension, she actually had higher retirement income than originally projected. History teaches us financial crises are wealth transfer mechanisms. Money flows from the unprepared to the prepared. You want to be on the prepared side. The golden rule I learned on Wall Street: when everyone is zigging, you should be zagging. The same principle applies to retirement planning. Everyone trusts the system. You should become independent of the system. This isn't just financial strategy, this is survival strategy. Because over the next 10-15 years, the retirement landscape will change fundamentally. Those who adapt will survive. Those who remain rigid will struggle. The beautiful thing about crisis is that it creates clarity. When systems fail, pretense disappears. What works becomes obvious. What doesn't work gets eliminated. We're approaching one of those clarifying moments in retirement planning. Smart money is already moving. Sophisticated investors are reducing their dependence on traditional retirement accounts. They're creating multiple income streams. They're buying inflation-resistant assets. They're preparing for system failure. You can see this in the data. Sales of rental properties to individual investors have surged. Purchases of dividend-paying stocks by retail investors have increased. Enrollment in financial education courses has exploded. People sense something is wrong with traditional advice. The question is, will you be among the early adapters who benefit from this transition? Or will you be among the late majority who suffer the consequences of system failure? Recognizing that the retirement system is mathematically unsustainable leads to wealth preservation strategies. Let me show you the exact mathematics, because numbers don't lie. The Social Security Administration's 2023 trustee report is explicit. The trust fund will be exhausted in 2034. After that date, payroll taxes will only cover 77% of scheduled benefits. The current average Social Security benefit is $1,800 monthly. After 2034, this drops to $1,386. That's a monthly loss of $414, an annual loss of $4,968. Medicare faces an even worse situation. The Hospital Insurance Trust Fund will be exhausted in 2031. Medicare Part A benefits will initially be cut by 11%, then more cuts each subsequent year. The 401k mathematics are completely devastating. According to Federal Reserve data, near-retirement Americans' median 401k balance $65,000. Mean 401k balance $232,000. Households with no 401k 57%. Using the 4% withdrawal rule, $65,000 balance generates $2,600. Annual income $232,000 balance generates $9,280 annual income. Both figures are below the federal poverty level. The 2024 poverty threshold for a single person is $15,060. Pension mathematics show complete disaster. According to Pew Research, state pension plans' average funded ratio 72% total unfunded liability. $1 trillion Illinois, 40% funded New Jersey, 58% funded Connecticut, 52% funded. What does this mean? Government workers in these states will receive only a fraction of their promised pensions. But the real shock lies in the underlying assumptions. All calculations assume 7% plus annual returns. How realistic is this assumption? Over the past 10 years, the S&P 500 averaged 12.9% returns. But this was an exceptional period. We had unprecedented monetary stimulus, zero interest rate policy, quantitative easing, and demographic dividend. Conditions over the next 20 years will be completely different. Higher starting valuations, higher interest rates, demographic headwinds, geopolitical instability, debt sustainability concerns. Under these conditions, achieving 7% plus returns becomes much more difficult. Warren Buffett said in 2023, equity returns over the next 10 years will be significantly lower than the past 10 years. JP Morgan's long-term capital market assumptions, U.S. large-cap equities, 6.0% annual return, U.S. bonds, 4.4% annual return, 60/40 portfolio, 5.4% annual return. The drop from 7% to 5.4% seems small, but the compound effect is massive. $100,000 over 30 years at 7% return, $761,225. At 5.4% return, $481,070. Difference $280,155. This difference represents the gap between comfortable retirement and poverty. The international perspective is equally sobering. Japan has experienced 30 years of low returns. The Nikkei was at 39,000 in 1989. In 2023, it was at 33,000. After 34 years, it's still below its peak. Europe shows similar stagnation. The DAX, FTSE, and SEC all show long-term underperformance. Belief in American exceptionalism is dangerous. Demographics, debt levels, and political polarization. America faces similar challenges. Here's the mathematical reality. Traditional retirement strategies depend on traditional return assumptions. When these assumptions prove invalid, the strategies fail. The solution: develop strategies independent of return assumptions. Wealth preservation approaches that depend less on market performance. These approaches fall into three categories: cash flow generating assets, inflation-resistant investments, tax-advantaged structures. Let me give you concrete examples of how this works in practice. Cash flow approach: instead of relying on portfolio withdrawals, focus on assets that generate income. A rental property producing $2,000 monthly provides $24,000 annually, regardless of property value fluctuations. Dividend approach: a portfolio of high-quality dividend stocks yielding 4% provides income that typically grows with inflation. Unlike bonds, dividend payments can increase over time. Business ownership approach: a small business or franchise can provide both income and tax advantages. Business income often adjusts with inflation automatically. The key insight: these approaches provide income without depleting principal. Traditional withdrawal strategies force you to sell assets in down markets. Income-producing assets let you hold through market cycles. Here's a real example from my practice. A client built a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks worth $800,000. The portfolio yields 4.5%, providing $36,000 annually. During the 2022 market decline, the portfolio value dropped to $650,000, but the dividend income actually increased to $38,500 because companies raised their dividends. This client didn't panic because his income was secure. He didn't have to sell stocks at depressed prices to meet expenses. In fact, he used the market decline to reinvest dividends at better prices. Mathematical certainty: traditional paths lead to failure. Alternative paths provide survival. Early adopters gain the biggest advantages. Now let me share what I've observed in my 25 years of working with clients who successfully navigated system uncertainty. These aren't recommendations, these are patterns I've witnessed among those who protected their wealth during previous crises. The first pattern involves reducing dependence on single systems. During my years at Fundstrat, I noticed something interesting about our most resilient clients. They rarely put all their eggs in one basket. I remember a client back in 2019. Let's call him David. He was a software engineer earning $180,000 annually. Most of his colleagues maximized their 401k contributions, putting in the full $19,000 allowed. David did something different. He contributed just enough to get the company match, about $8,000. The remaining $11,000, he put it in a regular brokerage account. His colleagues thought he was crazy. "You're missing out on tax savings," they said. "The 401k is the smart choice." Then 2020 happened. David's colleagues watched their 401k balances plummet and couldn't touch the money without penalties. David, he had flexibility. When the market crashed, he didn't panic because he wasn't forced to sell. When opportunities appeared, he had accessible capital. This isn't about David being smarter. This is about system dependency versus flexibility. The second pattern involves creating various income sources. I've noticed that clients who weather crises best never rely on single income streams. There's a retired teacher I worked with, Sarah. She taught for 30 years in Illinois, earned a modest pension. But Sarah had an interesting side story. During her teaching career, she tutored students after school, not for the extra money initially. She genuinely enjoyed helping kids learn. But over the years, word spread. Parents recommended her. She started charging modest fees. By the time she retired, her tutoring had evolved into something unexpected. She was earning $2,000 monthly helping high school students with college prep. What started as helping a few neighborhood kids had become a sustainable income stream. When Illinois pension crisis hit and her pension got reduced, Sarah barely noticed. Her tutoring income had actually grown. She was teaching online, reaching students across the state. The fascinating thing, Sarah never planned this as a retirement strategy. It evolved naturally from doing what she enjoyed. The third pattern involves assets that hold value during uncertain times. I've watched this play out repeatedly across different economic cycles. One client story stands out. In 1998, a plumber named Mike inherited $50,000 from his grandmother. His financial advisor suggested putting it all in tech stocks. This was during the dot-com boom. Mike did something different. He bought a small duplex in his hometown for $48,000. It needed work, but Mike had the skills to renovate it himself. He rented out both units. His friends laughed. "You could have tripled your money in the market," they said. The tech boom was making everyone rich, at least on paper. Then 2000 happened. The dot-com crash wiped out millions in paper wealth. Mike, his duplex kept generating $800 monthly in rent. During the recession, rental demand actually increased as people couldn't qualify for mortgages. By 2010, Mike owned 4 rental properties. The monthly income covered his living expenses entirely. He could work because he enjoyed it, not because he had to. Again, this isn't about Mike being a real estate genius. This is about owning things that people need regardless of market conditions. The fourth pattern involves understanding how location affects wealth preservation. This connects directly to our migration discussion. I worked with a family in 2015, successful professionals earning $300,000 combined in New York. They were paying $45,000 annually in state and local taxes alone. They started noticing something. Their friends who had moved to Florida weren't just saving on taxes. They were building wealth faster. The tax savings were being reinvested, compounding over time. This family spent 2 years researching the move. They established business connections in Florida, bought property, created genuine ties to the community. When they finally changed their tax domicile, it was clearly legitimate. The financial impact was dramatic. The $45,000 in annual tax savings became investment capital. Over 8 years, this compounded into over $500,000 in additional wealth. But here's what struck me. The move wasn't just about taxes. The family discovered they preferred the lifestyle, the weather, the business environment. The financial benefits came with personal benefits. The final pattern involves continuous education and flexibility. The clients who navigate changes best are those who stay informed and adapt. I think of a couple I worked with, both teachers approaching retirement in 2019. They realized their pension system was underfunded and started researching alternatives. They didn't panic or make dramatic changes. Instead, they began educating themselves. They read about retirement planning, attended seminars, joined online communities of people facing similar challenges. Over 3 years, they gradually implemented changes. They diversified their savings, created additional income streams, and prepared for various scenarios. When their pension benefits were reduced in 2023, they were ready. What would have been a crisis became a manageable adjustment. What connects all these stories? None of these people followed traditional retirement advice exclusively. They all maintained flexibility, created options, and stayed engaged with their financial situation. They weren't trying to beat the system or find secret strategies. They were simply responding to reality as they observed it. The teachers who started tutoring, the plumber who bought real estate, the family who relocated, they all saw patterns and adapted accordingly. These patterns become more relevant as system reliability decreases. When traditional structures face stress, flexibility becomes valuable. The retirement crisis we discussed isn't going away. The mathematical problems will only intensify. Those who recognize this reality and prepare accordingly will fare better than those who don't. This isn't about predicting the future or timing markets. This is about acknowledging uncertainty and maintaining options. The system won't protect everyone, but individuals can protect themselves by understanding how wealth preservation actually works in practice. These stories aren't unique or special. Similar patterns play out across thousands of families who navigate economic uncertainty successfully. The difference isn't intelligence or luck. The difference is awareness and action, recognizing reality and responding thoughtfully. Your situation may be different from these examples. Your solutions may be different too, but the underlying principles remain consistent. Flexibility, diversification, and continuous learning. The retirement lie costs people their options. The truth preserves them. These strategies are more complex than traditional advice. They require more effort, more learning, and more risk management. But what's the alternative? Being a passive victim during system collapse, spending your retirement years in poverty, becoming a financial burden on your children. History is clear. System-dependent strategies fail. System-independent strategies survive and thrive. The mathematical certainty, traditional retirement planning is inadequate. Personal wealth preservation is essential. You don't have to make this transition alone. Millions of Americans are reaching the same realization. Communities are forming. Resources are being shared, experiences exchanged, and mutual support provided. This conversation is the beginning, not the end. Your retirement security journey starts here. Those who start early gain the biggest advantages. Late starters face greater struggles. The system won't protect you, but you can protect yourself. In this process, you maintain control. The timing is yours. Success is yours. The time for facing reality has arrived. The time for action has begun. Remember, the retirement lie isn't just about money. It's about freedom, dignity, and independence in your golden years. Don't let this lie cost you everything you've worked for.